Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I've lost count on how many webinars we've done, and Rebecca's been, it's not quite 365, but we're getting close, okay? And Rebecca's been a guest of mine for a very long time, but I'm so glad to have her back and able to talk about flooding because of the current situations, and it's just super important that you have this information before it happens to you. So, while Rebecca is doing her intro, which you must have just screen shared, Rebecca.
Yep.
Okay, and I was gonna make that, hopefully everybody can see that well. I am going to work on getting Dana into the room. Okay, excellent. Take it away.
Okay, guys. So there we are. That's me and Dana, and she's working hard on trying to get Dana into the room. This presentation is dedicated to the people that have been lost, and we still don't know how many have actually been lost in the Guadalupe River flash flood on July 4th. And I saw a video that was posted this morning, and one of my colleagues, Captain Dana Lacey, who we're trying to bring in, was doing training last week just on trying to get people out of vehicles in swiftwater. And she also does large animal rescue with me. So trying desperately to get her in here to talk about these things, particularly to answer you guys' questions, because I know there's going to be questions. So I'm going to go through this and just hold your questions to the end, and we can stay on as long as you need to. But I'm going to cover some of the basic things that a lot of people don't seem to understand, or the myths that are out there. So why are we really here? Turns out, I know some of you guys are from Australia and other places, but FEMA here in the United States is our Federal Emergency Management Association and agency, and they take care of, looking at disasters and those kind of things. And they say floods are the most common and widespread of all weather-related natural hazards that result in disasters. What that means is it's a hazard and it results in disasters because we are standing in the way. And that's sort of the way to think about natural hazards, is they're there all the time. We just don't think about them until we are impacted by them. And it doesn't matter. It was ironic, I thought, that on April 5th in Arkansas, they were reporting flooding and people having to evacuate horses from the flooding last April. And the same day down in Queensland, Australia, they were having the same thing. They had a big hurricane, their cyclone, that's their name for it. Same day, Queensland, Australia, and somebody with a horse trailer is out floating through the whatever, and the responders are out there trying to get the horse out of the trailer, and it's an injured horse inside the trailer. So it happens everywhere. And the thing that the fundamental, if you cannot stay the rest of the thing, I want you to understand this thing from FloodSmart. Nature does not read flood maps. They don't understand how risky floodplains are. A lot of people don't understand that this is all based on probability of you losing your home. They're not even worried about your barn. They're worried about you losing your home. There's a 26% chance that a non-elevated home in one of those special flood hazard areas will be flooded during a 30-year mortgage period. What they're trying to tell you is it happens everywhere. So we got to get smarter about it. When we do this presentation, I want you guys to think about, I'm going to try not to, I know I've got some kids on here, some young people that signed up, and that's fantastic. The graphic photos, I try to take out the worst of the stuff. But there's a lot of difficult ideas, and what I end up doing in a lot of these presentations is trying to change the way people think and get them to follow up, to do something about it. And I'll try not to offend anybody, but I really want you guys to laugh, because we're adults, most of us, and I want you to laugh and learn something at the same time. So I'm going to start with some real basic stuff, and that is that you are standing or sitting in a watershed. I'm sitting right now.
Okay, Rebecca, first let's introduce Dana, because I got her in.
Yay! Okay, awesome, Dana. So Dana has been doing large animal rescue since before it was cool last century, and that shows how old we are. And she is a captain at Roanoke Fire. And
wait, she doesn't have sound. Dana, you got to get your sound on.
How about
there
now?
We go.
Oh, there we go.
We can hear you. There you can hear you. And so what we're going to do as we go through these things, Dana, if you've got comments, you're going to make comments. And at the very end, that's where we really are looking for your expertise. But if you've got comments, just make me stop. All right, so.
I'm going to make 2 suggestions. One, if you're not speaking, mute yourself, because we'll get feedback. Two, I disconnected your screen share because it was 15 slides and everybody was complaining. So let's see this. Let's see. Let me just look through the chat here and see if there's anything else. Technically, does anyone have the sound to be able to listen to the audio of the presentation? All right. If you cannot hear anything, please let me know. Our sound is working as far as I know. So just pop that in the chat because nobody wants to miss anything on this one. So there's your 15 slides again, Rebecca. You got
okay, let me go to. So it says that I'm doing a
slideshow. The attendees are muted because we can't have you all speaking.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they're all muted. Okay. All right. So attendees just need to stay muted and guests just mute. I'll just mute like when I'm not talking just so that it doesn't cause conflict.
So I have it on full screen. Can you see you're standing in a Watershed?
Nope, screen? You've got 15 screens, slides on that screen.
Why is it?
I don't know. You need to pick one.
Let's see here.
There, that's better. And can you make it full screen?
Yes, I will make it full screen. What is going on here?
Oh, I don't
know. Anyway, there we go.
Getting better. We just still have the menu bar at the top. So
I don't know why it's doing all that, but
okay.
Full screen. There we go.
Ah, there you go. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. I'm gonna mute myself. Okay.
Okay. And I'm gonna keep on going. Okay. So we did that part. So we are sitting in a watershed. In my case, we're standing in a watershed most of the time. And this is pretty basic. Snow, rain, hail, it's precipitation. And it's going to go downhill due to gravity. So it doesn't matter if you're sitting in a desert or you're sitting in a forest or you're sitting in a mountain or a valley, everything is going to drain downhill from where you are eventually to the ocean. So I would give one example of this orange one in the center is the Mississippi River Basin. And that's going to collect all the water from this area and other rivers and take it eventually to New Orleans, right? So that's just a basic example of a watershed. And we know that there's been problems with flooding across America. A lot of this it's been in the New York Times. There's been lots of things where we're looking at properties and risks of flooding during major storms. And this is old estimates from FEMA, and this is other estimates that's as of 2020. But if you look in the news, just about any time, there's always investigative reporters that are saying, hey, there's bigger problems than what we're talking about. And part of that is because, I hope there's no realtors on this call, but people are trying to sell property. And nobody wants to say, hey, my property floods every 20 years when they're trying to sell something because they know they're not going to resell it. Nobody ever names their property, crappy ditch. Why would you? Because you want to say beautiful running brook or something, right? So that's part of our problem. That's where I get ourselves in trouble. And really what we have realized over the years is that water soaks into the soil over time. And if you look at the upper picture here, that shows what we used to look like. This just happens to be Virginia. I picked a spot in Virginia that had a good example over time. And that's what it used to look like. And then once we come in and we start adding, the mall and housing and roads and all those things, we end up with what we call impervious surfaces. So that's really what's going on. When you start seeing these flash floods and you start realizing that there's flooding going on in Virginia and places, quote, that never happened before, it's because these folks end up with a lot of water and they push it into their retention ponds or they push it into the creeks or the rivers, and then it goes downhill into the next community that's downhill. So if you're downhill from somebody else, which most people are unless you live at the top of a mountain, you're going to be taking other people's water. And over time, that is getting bigger and bigger. And everything that we put down, asphalt, roof, and a lot of people, even their yards, are just impervious surfaces. So you
happen to pick an area that's where my friend lives in about an hour and a half from me. You know that, don't you?
There you go. There's some flooding that happened in several places in Virginia that, quote, never has happened since we moved there in the 1700s or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's a matter of time, right? As we add more and more people. So it's a challenge over time. So The next thing is, now I want you guys to understand this is some math, and I know I've got some kids on here, so we're going to talk about some math, and that means it rains an inch. And if you think about how many of an inch over the surface of 1 square mile, that's 17 million gallons. So here in Georgia, it's not unusual for us to get 4 inches of rain in an afternoon. Actually, it happened to us about a week or so ago. In 3 hours, we got 4 inches of rain. If you total it up, that's 69 million gallons. They got to go somewhere. And because of gravity, they're going to go downhill. So then I can calculate things like what is the drainage basin for where I live. And I'm going to show you how I know that. And if I had to think about 2.3 square miles times 69 million gallons, it comes out that that's 159 million gallons that my drainage has to handle in 3 hours. That's a lot. That's 242 Olympic swimming pools. That's a lot. And so that's where the challenge comes in. So this is where you guys have got to start getting smart. StreamStats.usgs.gov. And you can look at StreamStats. I'm not going to show you how to do this, but you can identify a study area by this is my house, and this is the creek that is closest to my house. So I just clicked on the longitude and latitude of that, and then the site, if you have it. Interestingly, Wendy, Texas does not have this.
They don't have a stream map?
They don't have the StreamStats.usgs. I wonder why. Probably because it takes money. But most states have this. And New Mexico has it. We're going to use it here in a little bit. But what I can do is I can do a regression analysis, and I don't have to be smart about the math. The computer does it for me. If I put in my lat and long of the closest stream flooding possibility to my house, it will grab all of this drainage here and magically convert it into, it does the calculation for how much space it is. And it turns out that it's 2.3 square miles. And it all goes past my house. Now, fortunately, my house is way up high. But it's amazing that you can use those tools. So you can play around with that. That's a United States Geographical Service, and it's free. Anybody can get to it, unless you live in Texas. So there's some other sources that are of great importance, and it shows us that obviously we understand that flooding must be a big deal because the USGS has these little, every single one of these little points here is a stream monitor. So it's looking at the height of the stream flow that's in that stream. And people actually get paid to go out and set these things up. In some cases, they're still monitored manually. People actually go out there once a week or those kind of things. Most of them are automated these days, but that's what it used to be, is they were manual. And they're all over the United States. And what's really interesting is the colors show you what this current status is at any time. So why does that matter? If you also go to the water data that USGS has, they have information on how to get the real-time data in your state. You just plug in your state. They've got, you can figure out what monitoring locations. For me, I look at the Oconee River and the Ocmulgee River. Those are the two rivers that we like to kayak in. Those are the ones that we sometimes take our horses and go swimming in. And I want to know what the height of the water is before I take my horses, because I'm not taking them down there unless it's really low water, right? And then, of course, the cool thing is I can put in a water alert. So I can actually see if there's some flooding concerns. I can actually have it come right to my phone and warn me, just like some of the fire weather apps. It's the same thing. But we got to get smarter about using these kinds of things. And then, of course, if you want to look at historical water data, let's just say you're looking at building a barn, or you're looking at putting in fencing. And unlike me, all those years ago when I bought a place, they had fencing around the place, and I brought my horses out there, and I came out one morning and they were standing in 2 feet of water. Thank goodness it wasn't 6 feet, but I didn't know any better back then. So I know better now. Lots of that stuff is available to you. And what are the things that it does for you? Those kinds of things at waterdata.usgs.gov. You can look at, let's just say this is Georgia in the United States, and I live somewhere around down here. And I can look at the water data for the Ocmulgee River or for the Oconee River. Let's just say the Oconee River. And I can look, this just happened to be pulled back in 2021. And I can look at that and say, hey, what is the average precipitation on that particular day? What happened to the river? How high did it get? It went from about 7 feet or so up to about 12 feet when it got that much rain, and how much cubic feet per second was coming through there. Oh, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot that was coming through there, right? So that kind of information, I know that's math and I know that's graphs, and nobody wants to look at those kind of things, but it's important information, particularly if you're looking at buying something for your horses, or if you are living there and you're thinking, man, I'm looking around and realizing maybe I ought to do something.
Okay, Rebecca, I got it. Before you go forward, I got to stop you here for a sec, because you're like throwing a lot of stuff at people really fast. So can we go back 2 slides?
Yes.
Actually, the one before that, the other. Where's the website? I want to put the link in for the one you just posted,
it's
where they
National Water Dashboard. If you type in National Water Dashboard, you will find it.
National, all one word.
Yep.
Okay. Because I want people to be able to access this stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, and the National Water Dashboard is going to tell us.
That's where you're going to go to get the overall picture, and then you're going to click on your state, and it will bring you to this.
Okay, great. So, all right, and then this is the water data USGS.gov.
Yes, and they're all interlinked.
Okay, all right. So it's not like you have to.
Nope. Yeah, if you go to water data or water dashboard, either one, they're linked together.
Okay.
From the USGS. Just a little bit of Googling and you will find it for your state. You can put in water data for Virginia or New Jersey.
All right.
Okay. So why does all that matter? That's what we're trying to get to. Okay. And I know that's what Wendy's trying to get to, because normally this is the place we swim sometimes. Okay. And Dana's actually had her kids at my house, and we've gone swimming at this particular place. And it was about 6 feet. But when I drive across the bridge, when I first moved here, that's the bridge. And I said, that's interesting. I wonder why. This is like when you go out to Colorado or New Mexico and you look at those bridges and there's just dirt underneath you. There's just sand. There's nothing there. And you start thinking, what the heck? Why did the engineers spend so much money on this bridge? They could have just built it down there, right? Because they knew the part that you guys don't know, which is that what is the flood stage sets where we are going to put the bridge. And this particular bridge, I just hyper put the links on it so you can see basically below that bridge pier is about 10 feet. Above it is about 20 feet. Keep walking up here, and eventually it's a 50-foot bridge, about 40 feet. Wow. Well, if you look back at the historical data, it hit 34 feet in 2020. It hit 36 feet in 2015. It hit 41 feet in 1998, which would have been right there, right below, right about where the bridge piers are. I mean, so when people say, oh, it don't never flood like that, and I go, well, apparently you weren't home, or you were on vacation, or you were out of town, or you weren't paying attention, or you were an infant or something, because you weren't paying attention. The water monitors don't lie. They keep good records, and they've been doing it for as long as we've had people in the United States or in other countries, right? So if you take a look at that, they consider major flood stage to be 38 feet. And it's been above 38 feet, let's see, 1, 2 times in just the last 35 years, right? And let me tell you, I've stood on this bridge in 2020 when it was at 34 feet, which would be down here, and it was terrifying. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be above 40 feet. I wouldn't be standing on the bridge, I can tell you that. So why does all that matter? This is the exact same thing that I'm showing you here with the river crest. I'm going to show you here. How many times has it been above 40 feet over the last 100 years? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times above 40 feet, which is the flood stage in 100 years. So what is it, the whole thing with the 500-year floods and the 100-year floods and the whatever? It's bullcrap, folks. If you're listening to that, you're not listening to the right thing. So I'm going to show you what it actually means. This is what it means. The people that are selling you the quote 100-year or 500-year flood events are realtors, people that are trying to get you to move there. I don't know. People that don't know any better, I don't know. But they use all this confusing terminology. And the media came along about 50 years ago, and they said, oh, we'll call that 0.2% annual exceedance probability. In other words, it's going to get above that level. We'll call it a 500-year flood because it's a recurrence interval of 500 years. And it's very confusing, okay? So what that really means, if you're saying a 500-year flood, people assume that only is going to happen in 500 years. That only could happen this year, and it'll be another 500 years till the next time, right? No, it's all on probability, and it's just like flipping a coin. It could happen today and next year. It could happen 20 years from now. It's not the same as 500 years, okay? It's all based on changes in precipitation. And I know it's probably not politically correct, but you guys are smart enough to know that something's happening with our climate, right? I'm not going to get into that discussion, but it's changing, and water is changing. How much water is getting dumped out on properties is changing, and usually it's getting bigger, right? The sad thing is, since all this is based on statistics, USGS and FEMA can't adjust their mapping products and give you a better exceedance probability percentage until after it happens. So sadly, what happened in the Guadalupe River on July 4th, that will get changed on the map and make it even worse after it happens. But sadly, it's just like having a wreck at the local intersection. They don't put another sign up or blinky lights until X number of people die at it, right? So we got to get smarter on our own to take care of our animals, particularly since we tend to keep animals in places where grass loves to grow, which is things like floodplains. And that's what gets us in trouble. Again, all I'm trying to show you the exact same way is the exceedance probability. This happens to be for my place. The 500-year flood probability is a 0.2% flood exceedance probability, and it's not going to happen very often. But when it does, guess where it's going to end up? This is my house. That's the creek. This is where it's going to end up. It's going to come all the way up from Crooked Creek, all the way up, halfway up my property. Currently, that's my creek. That's my this little pond right here. It doesn't even show on the map. It's such a small pond. But all that's going to end up from here to there along that topo line, theoretically in a 500-year flood, is going to get flooded. Well, guess where my horses live? They live down here most of the time, right? So we got to get smarter. We got to learn about how to read a topo map. You know, here's my house up here at the 400, at the 500, 490 really. But down here in the 550, which is 50 feet below my house, is where it floods all the time.
So what are the little, see all the little blue things along the river? Is that?
That is swampy area, and that blue line is the normal creek and where it normally is at. And that's within, reading the topo map, if this is 500, 490, 480, 470, 460, 450, 440, 430. Normally, this area is within 430 feet above sea level, and that's normally where most of the floods stay. Occasionally, I've seen it get up into the 440, okay? And I've only been here 15 years, maybe 3 times that I've seen it in the 440. But what the map is telling me is a 500-year flood would be all the way up here, another 10 feet. Now, that would be a lot of water, which is what they're telling me. That would be a lot of water. 254 cubic feet per second would be running through there. That starts sounding like a flash flood, right?
Yep.
Hang with me, because that's where we're going to go to the flash flooding. So anybody can do this. In Georgia, we actually have taken the information from the USGS, and you can go in Georgia to the flood map program. And I know there's some other states that do this. And you can literally go to that thing, type in where you live. It puts, there's my house, and it tells me all this information. Not every single state does that. The problem is most people, when they're looking for property, they're not looking for where's the flood lines. They don't think about where is the wildfire coming through, right? That's what gets us in trouble. So, I'm not sure why I did this. Oh, because I don't have it on presentation mode. That's why. But I'm worried about taking it off of presentation mode. So I'll just do this. So
there you go.
What is the things that we do for, turn around, don't drown? You hear about this from the government all the time. It says, please don't drive across water. Well, if it's dark and there's just a little bit of water going across the road, aren't you safe, Dana?
Yeah.
The official answer is absolutely not. It's not that the water's maybe not that deep. If the water comes up halfway up the tires of your car and it hits you perpendicular, it will float you. You don't know that the road is actually there. You can look up any video from flash flooding and culverts floating and stuff and just look at the water and look at what it does to the asphalt, the undercutting, the guardrails. It can pick up all that stuff. If you go downstream, you end up basically on the side of a load head dam. You end up washed out against trees. It's really, really hard to get to you. And it can kill you. 2 people died in New Jersey 2 days ago because they got swept away in a vehicle in flash flooding. So no, don't drive through flooded roads. We kind of probably do it more than we should. Doing it by boats. We won't even walk in it if it comes up to our PFDs. So we can do a shallow water crossing if it's up to our PFDs. And beyond that, it's going to float us. Our life jackets.
Okay.
So if it comes up to our life vest, it'll float us. So if it's above that, then we end up floating and swimming, and it's pretty dangerous to even put us in the water. So boats are the safest place. Or, don't drive around barriers. People drive around barriers. People with big tires, big vehicles. People just happen to them. they just think it won't happen, and it's proven over and over again. Now, if you're sitting in traffic and oops, it happens around you, I might give you a little bit more concession. But if you drive into it around a vehicle or around a barrier, then you might have to wait a few minutes.
I saw a video of the Jersey Turnpike flooded on all the lanes, and people were still driving.
Yep. And I-40 in Asheville flooded again, and lost a bunch of lanes again. Mudslides, landslides, stuff that happens like that, you're not going to be able to really prevent that.
So people just think, well, I can't see the road, but it's fine. They don't think about the underpinnings of the road being destroyed by the flowing water.
Exactly.
Yep. And so they think, oh, it's safe to cross because, it's just some water on the road. They don't think of the water under the road.
Exactly.
That, and if it gets above your exhaust and stuff, it's going to choke out your vehicle and you're going to stall.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that if it gets floated by swift water. So
I guess I sometimes don't understand the mentality, if you will, of why people think, I know I just got Rebecca, why people think it's okay. Oh, it's okay. I can do this.
They saw it on social media. Somebody else got away with it.
Yeah.
They don't
realize. You can't tell me what to do.
High water vehicles have a special attachment for it.
But the thing that I think people never think about is who's going to save them and what you're risking their lives to do because you did something really stupid. And I'm sorry, that is stupid to drive through high water. Okay, I'm sorry. Because we know, that what is it? What's the expression? You said it already. About don't
turn
drive.
Around, don't drown.
Turn around, don't drown. Thank you. It's a great set. Yeah, it's right there on the screen. But I guess we just water is the one thing I think people underestimate more than anything. You can see a tornado, you know a hurricane's coming, but they seem to.
If you think about it, we take it for granted, right? I mean, we go to the beach, we go to the lake, we swim in the creeks, we swim in the pond. We have this association with water. Nobody, well, I mean, there's a few people that go to see the fire, but most, that's just because they're nosy. It's not like they take their vacations at fires, you know? So it's sort of complacency, maybe. We sort of get used to it. We don't think of it being so dangerous. But when you watch these videos, I mean, from all over the world of flash floods, particularly because they're so instantaneous, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So part of what the problem is too, and the government's always trying to get people to listen to this, is what does a flash flood watch or a flood watch mean? You know, it means that you're within the designated watch area and you need to be alert. If there's a warning, it means it's happening and you need to get to higher ground now. It's not like, people say, oh, here comes a tornado. Honey, y'all go get in the tub and I'm going to go out here on the porch and watch, right?
Yeah.
That's part
Which
of the problem.
also happens.
Yes. We're all human. We all want to see what's going on. But what it means is get to higher ground. Then you can look around, right? Then you can take all the videos you want. But I think part of the problem is that if people don't have a good plan ahead of time, then grabbing those important things, grabbing the kids, grabbing the dog, stuffing the cat in a container, and then leading your horses out just takes more time than most people think. And that's where they really get themselves in trouble. When they start realizing how fast it's moving, then it's too late. And if you watch videos where, the flooding's coming up and vehicles are starting to float, people look like, if you look at their looks on their face, they're just amazed. They can't believe that it's happening. Anyway, so
are there any statistics on volume of rainfall versus speed at which that weather's flowing?
Yes. So
there are
most of the here, I'll give you an example. Most of what I was showing you earlier, this is the discharge, which is in cubic feet per second. So that's how much water's moving. And that's the gauge height in feet. And generally they're all attached, right? Like as the gauge height goes up, the amount of water in there, the volume also increases. But it's the volume, particularly in these flash floods, that really pushes it, because it'll pulse. But the thing is, it's not just water. At that point in flash flooding, it's trees and houses and everything else. And so when those hit bridges and hit other things, they take it out with them. So.
Okay, so that's actually a really good point. It's like, it's not just the water, it's everything else that's being carried along with it.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Did you see the video? There was a video, I think, of the initial, it was one of the rivers in Texas, and you literally watch the flow, and it's just a debris pile is all it is the beginning of the wave. So you've got all that debris pile. Number one, it's going to be impossible to swim in. It's going to hit the side of your vehicle because you decided to go over this road or over this bridge. This huge debris pile is going to push, and it's going to push you downstream, and it's going to continue to push you downstream. And, that first wave is nothing but trash. But you're also talking about, we always see people out kayaking in it. Walking through it, letting their kids play in the ditches after it. Flood water is absolutely disgusting. You will not see any legit rescuer in the water without a dry suit on during floodwaters, because the contaminants, your sewage treatment plants, your neighbor's shed, your garage, your, grease pits,
pesticide,
whatever.
Herbicide and everything else.
Everything possible. It's not just the water. That's why your animals standing in it will have a lot of vet problems if they're standing in it. So that's a big problem. Another thing is, if you think walking through the flooded parking lot at the grocery store going back to your car, what if a manhole gets floated? You can go through that manhole and you may or may not come back up.
Oh, that's a good point. Never even thought about that one.
So swirling in parking lots, swirling in drain culverts, there are case studies after case studies after case studies of people getting sucked down culverts, manholes, storm sewers, all that stuff. And there's no guarantee that you'll pop out the other side alive. So not to scare you, but to scare you.
No,
Yeah,
no, I think
good.
that's the thing is people need to be, I've never thought of getting sucked down a manhole in a flood, right? I mean, it's not even crossed my mind, but as soon as you say it, it's like, of course that could happen. And that makes me think of Texas and why they can't find so many people.
That's exactly right. Some of those things are covered by lots of goo, and it's going to take years for them to finally find those people, sadly. So let's use, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but this is just some of the data that we've already talked about. And I'm going to use this as a case report example. You guys know about Risotto. They had a racetrack flash flooding again this year. They also flooded last year. And so it's a really good example of what happened. And it was right after the flooding at Guadalupe River. So it's a good example. And really what's causing all this problem is this is where the racetrack is in Reduso Downs in this area. But last year in the spring, they had a lightning strike that caused a huge fire burns on both sides. So that's what Dana's talking about. All those trees that burned, all the goo that turned into, that was burned by the fire, it doesn't have any roots to hold it down now. And now, and whenever you have a big amount of water coming downstream, it takes it straight down into the water area. And what's really interesting is this is 2024. They were trying desperately to get it fixed. This is all the flooding that happened back then, and this was the areas that were impacted from the 2024 flood. What's interesting is if you look at the 2025 flood, it looks very similar, okay? So let's just take a look at it. What happened, this is from August 2024 to July 2025. Did we have any other floods? That's the big flood in 2024. This is the one in 2025. Obviously well over the major flood stage. So what I did was I went and took a look at what is the square mileage of the drainage basin. I used that StreamStats regression analysis to determine the size of the drainage basin that's going down here. Well, guess what? That's the area that burned. This is the area that burned. Guess where all that stuff's going to go? It's going to go right down into these rivers as soon as there's a flood or a lot of water coming downhill, and it hasn't even had a year to heal yet, right? And
so,
of course,
Rebecca, when was the fire in relation to the two floods?
June last year, and then it flooded in July, right after the fire, and then now it's a year later, and it's only, things can only come back so much, particularly in areas like that, and it hasn't healed. It's going to take 20 years to heal, to really hold that soil. And they know in New Mexico and Arizona and those kinds of areas, they know that happens after burn scars. They know that they're going to see more flash flooding. But it's just fascinating to look at it. This is, all the rivers that have their little stream gauges on them so that they can monitor what's going on. Just like I showed you StreamStats for Georgia, this is the same thing for New Mexico. But here you go, multiple floods. Last year, and they moved 250,000 yards of debris, tried to put in a new retention system. They knew it was a problem. So they spent, $30 million trying to fix it up for this year. And then here comes a little flood. Well, in this case, a flash flood. And there you go. So again, waterdata.usgs.gov. For every single state, you can get a lot of this information. Where is what's going on at the time? And this is even cooler because this was on 12 July, and I pulled it up, and here you go. Here's a bunch of things that were having problems even on that day, right? Because they're purple or they're blue, which tells you it's much above where they should be. Anyway, you got to find those kinds of things online and start getting smarter about that, because this is what it looks like. And what's interesting is they tried to fix it, but obviously this end of the racetrack is still having all kinds of problems, right? So, they just finished $30 million worth of fix, and they fixed it in April, and here it is July, and they've moved all the races down to Albuquerque, which ironically, I'm going to be in Albuquerque next week doing some training. So there you go. That's the way it happens.
Let me ask you a kind of sort of related question. Insurance. So this racetrack just spent $30 million to fix it, and it's wiped out again. What's going to happen to the insurance on this track?
You know, I am not in the insurance business, but I'm going to tell you that over time, that's really what's changing a lot of these things, both for fire type disasters and flooding disasters. People are finally starting to say, oh my goodness, I am sick and tired of rebuilding everybody's house in Florida or in wherever that keeps flooding time and time and time again, right? Eventually, I mean, really all the rest of us are paying their insurance rates. But at some point, we are going to get sick and tired of that and say, I'm sorry, folks, but you're going to have to self-insure. So what is self-insurance? You want to build a house down there in the pretty little brook in the creek, but we know that it's in a flood zone. Sorry, you can't get insurance. That's just the way it is. You can rebuild it yourself, but the rest of us taxpayers are not, and insurance payers are not going to pay your bill. Until we do that, and I don't know how to do that, that's just Rebecca's opinion.
Well, and in the end, you always have to follow the money, and what's going to drive things is, I guess in Florida, the insurance companies are pulling out for hurricanes and now floods and fires. So,
which means we got to get smarter ourselves, right? So how do we? I mean, we've got the apps, we've got the websites out there, but we got to take that information and pin it down to what happens at our house, at our barn, at our facilities, and figure out how to get smarter about it. And that's why I'm trying to show you this. I know this is a lot more technical than a lot of people are like, whoa, but I'm going to tell you, once you start digging in it, you're going to be like, holy crap, my place, I need to do this or that. I need to have a plan. And if it's going to rain more than 3 inches an hour, I need to get out. You know, nothing is more distressing than having those kind of things happen. So this is just to show you again what that gauge shows for here July, looking at what happened. We had a little pulse here, a little pulse here. That's easily predictable because the fire happened right here in June. And then there you go, right? So I'm going to show you what a pulse looks like. This is that same stream at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm going to run the video and I'm going to show you something you can't believe. Did you see it? That was the flood.
Wait, go back and do it again, because
there you go. I'm going to run it one more time.
Yep.
Watch real close.
And can you pause it there? Oh yeah. Wait.
Go
back and pause that.
Yes. So what I did was I took it and I took screenshots. That's 1400, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. That's 2 o'clock. That's 3 o'clock, 3:30. 3:30, the water's coming up. That's 4 o'clock. The water is all the way over here, way over there, and it's impacting buildings over there, and it's way up this tree. That's the tree. That's it. Half an hour later.
Wow.
3:30, 4 o'clock. 3:30. See the buildings over here?
Oh yeah.
4 o'clock. Look at this tree. I mean, it's just amazing. And the water started at 3 o'clock. It was down there. So that is how fast these things happen. Yeah. It's just amazing. For another half an hour, it's starting to go down. You can see now the building is here because it just took that building down and brought it downstream. But a half an hour later, it's going down. So literally, when they say flash flood, it's only about an hour long. But can you hold your breath for an hour? That's the problem, right?
In a rapidly flowing, debris-filled, gunky water.
Now, what's ironic is this was their stream monitor, right?
Yeah.
Which is way below the water was up here. Those stream monitors way down here. So that's the point. And if we look at it with other eyes, so what I've done is I put the little circle here. That's the racetrack at Reduso Downs, okay? This is the topo from satellite level, all right? And what it looks like is this is streams coming in, streams coming in, streams coming in, streams coming in, streams coming in. Everything points downhill to here, right? And that's where the racetrack is. Why did we put the racetrack in there? Anybody know?
Cheap property.
Yeah, cheap property, and it's flat.
I was going to say, easy to build a racetrack.
Exactly. And so as long as it doesn't flood, we're good. This is awesome. We can make lots of money. We're doing all kinds of things. Everybody's having fun, all that. Until every single one of these creeks fills with water because it's been raining. And we also have the burn scars that happened up here from the wildfires last year. And all that stuff comes downhill and then starts coming down here. That's what's happening. And time again, if you take a look at it from the satellite, all the different things, guess what else is happening? More and more humans are moving in here. And that's what this is. It's houses and stores. And that's, again, that impervious surface. So water runs down, runs off the roof, runs down off of the asphalt, runs into the river because we're shoving our water off. We're not forced to put it into a retention pond or our retention ponds overflow and it goes downhill. So that's what happens. And then this is the situation. So these are all the barns. These are horses that are in those barns. And there's nothing they can do. The river literally runs through it. Isn't there a movie about that? The river runs through it.
Yeah, and then there's the ditch on the other side.
And then there's the ditch over here that they dug to try to take some of the thing off of here, right? But in the end, it just surrounds all the area where this is from the satellite, so you can see where the barns are, right? There's the river and there's the ditch. Talk about between a rock and a hard place, or let's see, a river and a ditch, right? Just and that's the thing. 99% of the time we're fine, but the thing is, we got to get smarter about what's happening upstream. How much time does it actually take us to get all these horses and all the people? And Dana will tell you honestly, as a firefighter, the horses are not their first priority. She loves horses. She's got horse knowledge, but at some point you got to say, well, we got to save the people first, right? So how much time does it take to get that many horses and people out of all this stuff away from up to the high ground?
In 30 minutes.
Than you have.
Say again?
More time than you have.
Yeah. I mean, we just watched that video that Rebecca just showed us. That was 30 minutes. You don't have 30 minutes to get all those horses out.
And so what we've got to do is we got to get better at warnings and watches. And, I always tease people, are you playing Candy Crush, or are you looking at the weather? Because at some point in your life, you start looking at the weather every day. And then you go, wait, have I turned into a older than 20-year-old person? It's not just old people that look at the weather, right? It's important, and it can affect you. And in our modern lifestyle, a lot of people think that the weather doesn't really impact them, but I promise you, in these kinds of situations, it does. Yeah. So all that up till now, and I know we're running on time, but
it's okay. No, you can take as long as you like.
We can run as long as we want. Good.
Yep.
So now I'm going to take this information and I'm going to show you what FEMA knows about flood zones. Okay. It says in flood zone AE, which is this one right here,
which is
right here in flood zone AE. Okay,
so they rate the flood zones.
They rate the flood zones, and they tell you this one, it's going to flood almost every year. 50% chance right here. 50% chance. This one's part of it. So they already tell you structures in zone AE are more likely to experience flooding and often require mandatory flood insurance if they have a federally backed mortgage. So after you pay off your mortgage, you don't have to have flood insurance anymore, but you probably ought to, right? Because it means there's a 1% annual chance of flooding. Wait, 1%, that's confusing. No, that's a once every 50 year kind of thing, right? Wait, that might be every 20 years. It could be every other year because it happened every other year here, right? So they're using all this flood insurance and base flood elevations and all these kind of things, but we got to be smarter than them when it comes to these kind of things. If you are looking at a piece of property and it's in zone AE, this is the regulatory, the crosshatched with red is the regulatory floodway. In other words, you can't build anything in there supposedly. Wait, there's something in there. And then zone AE, they tell you it's going to happen more often. So they already know that this is the flood zone. And guess what? There's a bunch of horse barns in there. Wait, look at this. Why isn't the casino and all that stuff down there? What do you think? They knew. They know that ain't going to flood. That's going to be a lot to get that in the flood zone. So they didn't put it there. But everything else, the racetrack and the horse barns and everything else, the parking areas, whatever, we'll put it wherever, because it's not going to happen very often. Again, it's Rebecca's opinion. I'm just telling you what I'm thinking. And my daddy was a geographer, and he always said, better build your house up above the road, because they spend millions of dollars every year to check where they should put the road. And the road still sometimes floods.
Yeah.
I grew up in Florida. That's what he taught us. So I know at some point, you guys are still thinking, what does it got to do with me and my farm, and how am I going to prep? So I'm going to get out of the math and all those kind of things. And I'm going to tell you what Dana was trying to tell you. You got to have a plan, and you don't have enough time. So you need to have a preparedness plan to think through. If you think you're going to move through that, you're not. And you're leading horses through that with boats is ridiculous, particularly if it's moving water. Even if it's just flood water, you don't want to be leading horses through it. You don't want to be walking through it yourself. You can't drive your vehicle through it, so you got to have a plan, and you got to get around out of there ahead of time. So we always try to make it funny. So, when you're talking about farm disaster plans, I mean, the best way would be to think through it ahead of time and try to devote some effort and time and look at some of these websites and come up with some suggestions. And then another good way would be, hey, man, looks like there's a hurricane coming and we could have some flooding here. So let me think through what I'm going to do for a shelter-in-place plan and an evacuation plan. But this is what most people do, right? I have so many pictures of people going to Walmart once the hurricane is 2 hours out, right? So that's a poor method. Let's stay away from that. Let's try to use the best method. So that's what this webinar is about. In general, we're always talking about doing pre-planning of your facility, whether your house or your barn or both. We always talk about usually in fire things too, so electrical inspections. That might be important if you have a flood too, right? But find your property on those terrain maps, the flood maps, and the fire maps for those of you that live out west, particularly, that have to worry about wildfire more often than most of us on the East Coast. And since Wendy said it, update and read the fine print on your insurance. Because when you start talking about flood insurance and you talk about insurance in general, I don't know about you, Wendy, but every once in a while, about every once a year or so, I get a little thing from the insurance company and it says, you should read this. Does anybody read it? No, because what it is it's update the fine print. And most people are like, whatever. What they're doing is they're saying, I know that you have insurance with us, but we're taking away this benefit, or we're taking away this particular coverage, and this doesn't apply anymore. And because most people never read it, you don't know. 20 years later, you look at your insurance, what you thought you had is not what you had. And I'm not against insurance, but I'm going to tell you, if you have it and you're paying for it, you do not want to be in the position of getting pennies on the dollar back for your place when you thought you were going to get it rebuilt for free, right? So just take a look and take a look into that insurance thing. So, and then we always talk about all hazards plan for both evacuation and shelter in place. Evacuation means you load everything in the car, the horses on the trailer, and you leave. You go somewhere else. Where are you going to do that? If you have a flood in your place and you lose your place and you look at these things on social media, you see people leaving. Where are they going? A lot of them are going to a hotel. You can't take the horse to the hotel. Where are you going to put your horse? What happens if a lot of people are leaving at the same time? Is there going to be a evacuation shelter for horse people in your county or in your state? What's going to happen? And then shelter in place would be, I can't leave because I'm on the highest ground around anyway, but what am I going to do to make sure I have food and forage and all the things for my horses, water for my horses, water for me, things like that, right? And a lot of that comes down to the same old thing we've talked about in many of our webinars with Wendy. Teach your horses to come, lead, load, and stand tied. in a disaster situation, I don't need horses that are and doing all those things, right? I need horses that are like, okay, put my head in the halter, go with me, maybe leading two at the same time. They step on the trailer happily. They stand tied when I unload them from the trailer and tie them on the side of the trailer. They're not freaking out, because under duress, I need to maybe be able to tie them in this next to the trailer in the parking lot down at the local hotel, right? So thinking about it that way may change your attitude towards what you do at your place. When we talk about reflective address signs, make sure that the fire department can find you, right? And a lot of that comes down to just taking a look around your place. So let me prove it to you that a lot of people don't have these plans, okay? I'm not pointing fingers at individual people. There's so many examples. These are folks that were on the highest ground around until the water came up even more, right? So they tried sheltering in place. They had, obviously, hay and those kind of things, but at some point they said, you know what, we're leaving. So now they're evacuating. So what is your shelter in place plan? What is your evacuation plan? And what kind of safety considerations? And Dana would tell you, I don't want you walking across here with that much water in there, but there you go, especially moving water, right? Because when it gets up this high, she was talking about how you're going to float, but the horses float too. And can you imagine being in that much water, trying to catch horses, halter horses, and lead them out? And that's what these guys doing. Bless them, they're firefighters that got sent out there to try to catch these horses. But let me tell you, the horses are scared. They know they're having problems. They're running into fences. They've been injured. They're moving as a herd. How do you do that in that kind of water? You just can't. And it's really dangerous for people. And the firefighters generally are going to say, I think we're going to wait till the water goes down, and I hope those horses can find it to highest ground, and we'll go get them then, right? Because legitimately in swift water, we're not doing it because of the things that she's talked about. What else is in the water? You're out there riding your horse, but it's still getting in your boots. It's still getting on your legs. It's getting on your horse. It's getting on your cows. What else is in the water is everything, right? So this is just what Dana was talking about. Floodwater injuries from horses that have been standing in water for a day or two, and all the crap that's walking around that water. This is a absolute veterinary emergency. That horse needs to get to a vet. They're going to do the things that they can do to basically treat this. This is basically an infected burn. It's very similar. You can think about it the same. And you can see where the floodwater was, right? Yeah. Just awful, right? So sorry for the awful pictures, but it does heal.
How long does it take for standing in water for this to happen? No. I mean, how?
2 days. 2 days. And actually, what's really interesting is somebody in North Carolina, I can't remember her name, a veterinarian years ago, she did a great little study and found that horses that were standing in water right downstream from the wastewater treatment plants, the hog ponds, those kind of things, they had much worse injuries than horses that were standing in areas that were not close to those kinds of facilities. Well, it makes sense because they were impacted by the bacteria, the chemicals, and those kind of things that may be in the water. And, here's this horse, and here it is later, and it does heal. It just takes a month, right? That's a month later. This is this horse, and then a month later. So it's not something that anybody wants to be exposed to. And if it'll happen to them, it'll happen to you. So you don't need to be in that water either. There's many cases, like Dana was mentioning, where people have ended up with awful infections and injuries from walking through water. So in general, when we talk about the risk factors, whether or not we're going to do these kind of things, there's a shelter in place for you. You put all the cars and the horses and everything else up on the thing. There's the horse trailer, right? But that's great unless the water goes up any higher. And there's lots of examples of people, trying to be a hero out there on the horse, catching the horse, leading it across the stream and those kind of things. But man, once you know how dangerous it is, you're just like, I don't know. This guy actually he got this horse out. This was about 10 years ago, but oh my God, it's just so awful. If you've ever been swimming with a horse, it's fun, and you can't imagine how awful it would be in a flood.
It's really, really hard.
Oops.
Yep, really, really hard. So what it comes down to is having an evacuation plan. We got to head out earlier than we thought. This guy is waiting a little bit late for my taste, but at least he's leaving now before there's 4 feet of water, right? So when you know there's a possibility of flooding or a hurricane or you're affected by the burn scars or whatever, is the truck already hitched to the trailer? I've seen some people take 15 minutes just to hitch the trailer, right? Do you have fuel in the truck? Is it pointed down the driveway and ready to leave? Have you done your work? Collect the horses into a little paddock that's up close to the barn instead of in the 50-acre pasture, right? Do you have your valuables packed? When I talk about valuables, whether it's wildfire or flooding situations, I tell people, take everything as though nothing's going to be there when you get home.
Yeah.
Like, your mama's ashes, the safe, the stuff that's in the safe, whatever it is, take it with you because it may not be there when you come back. And nobody wants to say that, but that's the way it is, right? And we have the concept in the fire service of having a go bag. So you got, whatever's important to you. If you've got medications, if you like underwear to change every day, whatever you like needs to be in that go bag, and you grab that bag as you're walking out the door, and you don't have to think about it. You already know what's in that bag, right? And where you're going to go. So that's the basics of evacuation planning, and we've talked about that before, and Wendy's got plenty of examples from before. But I got to show you, Wendy, this is from flooding, and it also has, for extra fun, there's a lot of ice in it. But this is, by God, people that have horses that come when they call, right? I mean, look at this horse.
Oh, wow.
Coming across a flood zone with ice.
With ice.
And the horses are like, okay, Mom, I'm coming. Just awesome. I love that video. Here they come. Just amazing. So
wow.
Most people aren't in that situation. So, this is just some random pictures from various floods in the past. Why do you need to have your horses easy to catch, lead, load, handle, do all those things? Dana will tell you, water slapping up against the boat sounds funny, and this horse is a saint because let me tell you, my horse Onyx, she wouldn't get anywhere near this boat. This horse is like, okay, you can lead me from the boat. But even doing that is very difficult because you have a motor on the back, right? And it's really dangerous for horses too. And then, of course, the shelter in place stuff. This is the other things that we should think about. This is down in Florida, a friend of mine, and I love the picture that she took. There's 11 inches of rain, less than 24 hours from a hurricane. And that's her horses. They're like, we got it, Mom. We're in the shelter. We're sheltering in the barn, right? And this is just 6 or 8 inches of water in this case, so she didn't have to evacuate. But even so, that impact, sure, is the food touching the floor? Does the food get wet? Because once the food gets wet, it's going to rot really quick, right?
Yep.
Is your hay touching the floor? Do you need to put it up on pallets? You need to put it up 6 feet. Where do you need to put it? Where do you need to put your animals, right?
So I've got a question that fits in here. Somebody says, it seems like a dumb question, but would a flash flood that covered electric fence electrify the water, or would the fence cease working?
My husband has told me before that if you're not too close to electricity from an electric fence, you're okay. But every single year, there's somebody that jumps off of a dock next to boats, like in a marina, and gets fried. And dies because of it. So there's usually signs at the marina that say no swimming, and that's why, because there's electrical outlets to many of those boats for charging things, and if water and electricity don't mix. My husband is an electrical engineer, and he says that you're safe being around the electrical in flood water that's from an electric fence, but certainly not near the charger itself. And I just don't like electricity, so I'm going to avoid it like the plague, if at all possible. That probably...
I wouldn't think that it would be...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, somebody said...
It'll leave quickly anyway, so I don't know.
Right. But it's a good question, because that's one of the things is electrical and water is not a good combo.
Not a good combo.
Now if it's a power line, or if it's your your main drop to your house, or like the marina has a whole lot more power going to it than your little, electric box going to a fence. So,
but you do have to worry, like in this case with this barn, if this barn had power and a low outlet that the water got to, what kind of problem would that cause?
Yes, absolutely. So
I would cut the breaker.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Normally the breaker, or, a lot of people never think about it, but for barn fires and that situation, you want a main breaker on the outside that you can pull to cut it off where the horses can't touch it.
Yeah.
Because torque would touch it and put it back on. But that's a really important thing. You don't have to be running in the barn and fiddling around which part of this barn has the main, opening the doors to try to find where the that's what the firefighters have to do. It's really nice if you have a main switch on the outside, chunk, and turn it off.
Okay. And if he's somebody saying the GFCI, if you have those, it should be okay. But you always want those at any level where water might flood into it.
Correct. Yes. I don't like
after the storm. I would get an electrician to redo everything.
Yeah.
So when we think about high ground, for a lot of people, they say, well, and me too. I have my pastures that go down into a flooded area, right? And that's probably okay if they have the option to get to high ground. So this is a good example. This fence, goes down in this area, and that's where the horses normally were grazing. So what you do is you just don't close it off where they can't leave. You give them an option to get to higher ground, right? This is normally their pastures, and the horses have come up to higher ground. So you need to give them access to high ground. That's the first solution before the water gets up any higher. So that's where the topo map, the topographical information, helps you a lot. Where is the higher ground, right? Because this is one example of, the horses are locked in. They thought it was the highest ground, and it's obviously not the highest ground. So to me, some of the other things that we could do is raise that area, right? If we know that this is my property and we know this is the quote highest ground around, can we bring in some dirt? Can we make our round pen the safe place for us by putting in a lot more dirt and maybe raise it 6 feet or 10 feet? People go, oh my God, that's a lot of expense. Well, how much is it, to know that your horse is drowned because you didn't have a high place for them to go? I know that sounds mean. I'm not trying to be mean.
It's not mean. It's honest.
Don't lock them in the barn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't lock them in. There's so many horses that end up swimming in their stalls till they can't swim anymore, and it's just awful. And this is a good example from Queensland, okay? This is the highest ground around. They made this highest ground around, and it's for their sheep and their cows because they know this floods once in a while. So they made the highest ground around, and the sheep can find it, the cows can find it. And guess what? This is rainwater in here, and that's fresh water for them to drink. So it sort of kills two birds with one stone. And then what they do is they bring in boats, they bring hay and forage for the animals to eat while they're here until the flood water goes down. And that's actually paid for by their Department of Agriculture. And I was like, man, that's smart. Now, the snakes are going to be there too and all those things. I like snakes. Some of y'all probably don't like snakes. But, in a flood, everybody's trying to get to high ground. There you go. So tell them everything should be easy to lead, handle, and load so that you can do those kind of things, right? And can you tie it? Will it stand quietly? All those things. Nothing tests it like a flood, right? I love that picture. That person tied it to a fence. I can tell that would be a lot of things that would go wrong. So here's an example of, here's some kayakers, and they come along and they're kayaking in a flood. I have no idea why, but they realized that these cows were trapped in this area that's fenced off. So all they really did was they opened the fence and let the cows out and tried to give the cows some suggestions on where they should go. Apparently it's not that deep, and finally got the animals to safety from the flooding, right? So thinking through, just fencing. Cows don't come up to the fence and go, oh, well, I could crawl over this. They can't crawl over it until they get to floating, and then that's too much. So just simple things like leaving the gate open and getting them to a safe area where they have the option to get to high ground is the simple way to handle these kind of things. This is a sad situation that happened a few years ago. This is someone's beautiful indoor riding arena and lots of horses that were in there. They spent 3 days in 7-degree C, so that's like 45-degree water. There was a pony that actually drowned because he's a pony and he's shorter than everybody else, so eventually he drowned. They managed to finally get these horses out when the water went down, but that's what it looks like afterwards. It's just awful. So if the animals are in those stalls, you got to let them out and hopefully get them to high ground before the water gets this high.
Well, and not to mention that once water gets against doors, it's really hard to move them.
That's right. Exactly. And thinking about what's going to happen after the flood, right? Like this is the kind of damage you're going to have. That's the water line as it was going down. And I mean, every bit of that is going to turn into mold and mildew, and it's going to be absolutely awful, despite the fact that you're also going to have a messed up arena, right? Yeah, all your good footing is going to float away. But anyway, those are the kinds of think about, time and time again. There's so many examples from around the world. This one happens to be from the UK. So many examples of those kinds of things. Another thing we talked about, high water vehicles and those kind of things. This is a gal that ended up at one of my trainings years ago, and she volunteered these pictures, and thank goodness she did. And I was like, what were you guys thinking? And she said, well, we knew where the road was. So I was like, I can't see the road even from the satellite, right?
If it's still there.
If you look on the side of the trailer, who's that? It's a couple of the gals, and she just didn't know any better. They were just doing the best they could, and they got away with it. Thank goodness. And there's maybe a foot of water that's going through here, and it wasn't moving that fast, but still, let's avoid these kinds of situations. We really don't want to be in that situation, or leading our animals with a tractor. So many examples. And for all the people that say, oh, it never happens here, this is before Hurricane Harvey. I happened to be out in Houston, and I took that picture before Hurricane Harvey got there. Wait, what is this? Flood in feet, right? So that you can tell where the flooding is in the intersection, right? Well, if the DOT put that there, it's because sometimes it happens, right? Oh, yep. My goodness. So loading things, leading things with boats, it all sounds cool, but I'm going to tell you, it's really dangerous. It's really difficult. People get hurt doing all these kinds of things, no matter what they try to do. It's really hard to what are they doing? Roping a horse here and trying to lead it with a boat. This guy's trying to rope this horse and get him out of the arena. I mean, so crazy. So how do we respond to these kind of things? First of all, you can get a free topographic map of where you live if you go to, again, usgs.gov and just type in to their search engine topo. And it'll take you to this site where you can actually put in the thing that you're looking at and say, hey, what is my topo map so I can look at, in this case, the green is the trees, and in this case, the white or gray is where the water moves, right? So this, I'm just using the example of Hurricane Mills in Tennessee. They had a huge flash flooding event. For those of us that live in the East Coast and we say it never happens, it happens. It happened in Asheville with the hurricane, right? So you can go get a topo map of your place. That happens to be for Hurricane Mills. And when you look at that, you can also match that against your Google map. If most people are used to using Google Earth, but maybe you never looked at it with a satellite. So there's your house, normal Google Earth. There's your house if you function on the satellite, right? And then you can see, look at this, Wendy. I mean, this is a slough. This is a swampy area, right? And this is, the structures of the facility. But the satellite doesn't lie. It says, hey, here's the water and here's the slough, right? So take a look at your farm from above and you can see where some of the problems might be. And then you can go back to that flood map that we were showing you and look at this exact same property. There's all their buildings. This is the slough. This is the normal waterway. And that tells you where the flood's going to be. So guess what? You can find it anywhere you go, right? And this is one I love. They had a huge flood that came through here. And I was looking at this, and here is some buildings, those little red top buildings. And it's perspective. This is a regulatory floodway. So that tells you all those blue things are where the water's going to go, right? And there's the water. Wait, this little square right here.
Yeah.
There's the two little houses with the red roofs.
Yeah.
And this is all the flooding. So inside that little thing, I'm going to take you there. There's the two little houses with the red buildings. This is the regulatory floodway, and here's all the flooding. And there's all the houses. This looks like public housing to me. I don't know what the heck they were thinking. And then there's a bunch of houses, and this is the house that's down there like next to the pretty babbling brook. And then there's a bunch of other things. And it's totally predicted by the map.
Yep.
We got to get smarter, folks. We can't keep waiting for FEMA to come save us, okay? I mean, that's ridiculous. We got to get smarter. Where is the high ground on our properties where we can go to be safe? Okay, lastly, for those of you, that's the information. I'm going to go over what I think was going on with Guadalupe River. I am not an expert. I have just pulled the information that's available from public sources, and I'm going to tell you some of the things that we got to do, again, to get smarter about what's going on. This is what happened in Texas, and since we've lost so many people in that situation, in the Texas hill country, which means slope, which means water goes downhill, it was set up. This is Flash Flood Alley. If you look at Wikipedia and you look at Flash Flood Alley, you will find that Central Texas is considered the most flash flood prone region in the United States. That's been up before all this happened, right? If you take a look at the map, this is the hill country, this is Flash Flood Alley in Texas. All right, so what happens? Let's take a look. I just use Camp Mystic because Camp Mystic is sort of the flagship for what happened here. They had a huge flood about 100 years ago, and it affected them as well. We know this now, right? That's Zone AE. That's our regulatory floodway. We know that's going to flood on a pretty regular basis, right? The blue is still in Zone AE. It's not the regulatory floodway, but we, again, know that that's going to flood pretty often, right? So I put a big circle around Camp Mystic, right? The last 3 miles, that river drops about 50 feet in elevation over 3 miles. That's moving pretty fast, right? So let's look at what's available to us off of public sources to understand what's going on with the hazards that are involved in this, right? Here's Camp Mystic. I put a circle around it. Same thing is here, right? Camp Mystic, there's the river going downhill this way towards Camp Mystic, and it's got these hard turns, which means at that hard turn, the hydraulics of how water works, it's going to be doing some funky things right here, right? So they got between 6.5 and 7.46 inches of rain between midnight and 4:30 a.m. It caused that river to rise eventually to 37.5 feet, okay? If that's, that's right now, that's not final of the final things. They estimate that it was moving, based on your question, Wendy, 120,000 cubic feet per second going past Camp Mystic. 120,000 cubic feet per second. Okay, so that's yards and yards and yards of stuff and water and everything from upstream going by per second. That's half of an Olympic swimming pool per second. That's about the same as a normal what's going over Niagara Falls, based on some of the information, is going past Camp Mystic per second, right? You don't have a chance. No. The only other time that this has happened was in 1932, on July 2nd in 1932, but it was during the daytime. Nobody died because they heard it coming and they were able to get to high ground, and they didn't kill any of the campers. Less than 100 years ago. So there you go. There's a close-up of Camp Mystic and all the buildings that they had down in that area. To me, that's pretty damning. And part of the problem is some of these are tents, but some of them are fixed buildings. And so again, it goes back down to our complacency. We look at rivers as a place to be and to enjoy and kayak and swim and have fun, right? But it's also places where people can die if they're affected by this. So what I did was I overlaid the satellite. That's the normal Google Earth. This is Google Satellite. And it shows you where the water normally is, and the creek. This is Cypress Creek coming in here, and where their buildings are, right? And then if you go back here, all those buildings are in Zone AE, which we know is going to flood. It's a 1% chance of a annual flood hazard. What that means is once every 2 years. These places should get wet once every 2 years. They've been lucky. It's only happened in 89 years, right?
Yeah, and somebody said it also happened in 87.
Yeah, they had a flood in 87 too. Yep, it didn't get quite this high. So when you look at it and you do the websites that we did, you can take a look at how big is their drainage area. And you can start looking at that 1987 flood was about the same size as the 2025. 1987, again, daytime, they didn't lose any campers, right? 1932 was huge in feet per second, but there you go, right? The data from 2025 is provisional because they haven't made it final. But technically, that was a 4% chance of exceedance. That's a 25-year flood. And 87 to 25 is a little bit over 25 years.
Yeah.
This one, 2025 to 1932, is 80 something, maybe 90 something years. I'm not good at math.
It's okay.
Right? So there you
get
go. But when you take a look at it, it was an exceedance event. Okay, take a look at this. This is the major flood stage line, and it was well above that. It is horrific, but that shows you what Dana was trying to tell you about. That's all the crap that's coming down in that first wave, and it just comes through, and then it's gone. Within half an hour, it's gone, and it's back down to something that you would sort of more expect. And that is the problem with the flooding. When you take a look at it, actually took out the river gauge at Hunt, Texas. It stopped recording right there because it took it out. It had so much gauge height, about 37 feet, they think. So what was happening? Training of those weather systems moving over that particular area. From that earlier map, this right here is that flood alley. And it was just raining like crazy in that flood area. And this is the night before. They didn't know that it had happened yet. This is well before. This was July 4th at 1:26 a.m. I think that hit Camp Mystic at 5 a.m. So there you go. They were already saying, hey, but if you're not on, most of us are sleeping. Do you have the app that goes off that warns you, hey, there's a flooding event, there's flash flooding, there's all those things? What is the SOP at Camp Mystic? Again, I wasn't there. I'm not pointing fingers. I mean, those people, they lost their director. They've lost a bunch of children. They've lost people in their community. It's awful. But we got to learn from these things because this is not the first time. There's many other situations where that's happened. So I did a little bit of math. I already showed you guys the math. It's an approximate 288 square mile drainage basin for the Guadalupe River up to Cypress Creek, right at Camp Mystic. They got about 6.5 inches of rain. That ends up being times 17 million gallons over 1 inch of rain over a square mile. It ends up being 32 billion gallons.
Oh my God.
That's 49,000 Olympic swimming pools. That's what's coming down through that thing. There was no chance for those people. And I've heard stories of people who were calling, they were in their trailers and the trailer got picked up by the storm and is being moved down and they're drowning and they're making phone calls from inside their trailer. They couldn't get the door open because they're inside the trailer. I mean, this is the kind of thing. It's just absolutely awful. Anyway, if you want to get a hold of me, there you go. Dana, I'm going to let you answer the questions because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions.
One thing I noticed, we ended up in the mountains of in the northwest corner of Maryland over the weekend at my class, and you're driving through all these towns and you're looking at, because I'm trained to do it, looking at people's fields, people's farms, people's houses. It's like, that's where the irrigation is. So that's where their crops are. That's where their fields are. That's where their farms are. That's where these towns came because of that. How many recreational areas do we have as horse people that are based on flood zones and low points by creeks, rivers? I've got one here in my locality. So looking at that kind of stuff, but also I live in the mountains and we have a lot of flooding. I've been to disaster zones where one mountain range got 10 inches of rain in an hour and flash flooded, 2 or 3 hollows. That's all it affected of the county. But then, 40 people are missing because their cell phone service isn't great on a good day, and their phone lines are kicked off and their power lines are out. And 6 hours later, we're in there as a crew and VDOT is coming in to clear roads because the roads aren't even clear of debris and rocks. It's just something that until you see it, and I haven't seen it on the level that Texas and Hurricane Helene in the mountains and all that stuff are dealing with, but I've seen it on a smaller scale, and it's it's just something beyond what you can even really imagine. But it's not necessarily just the watersheds. It's your mountains, it's your landslides, your mudslides. You're not going to have the flood insurance necessarily. You live in the mountains. You live, I live on a mountain at 2,200, feet elevation. I don't have flood insurance. But if my house floods, then the rest of y'all are probably gone. So, it's just kind of, that's just where I live. So, it's just, you just kind of got to look at where things are. Your low water bridges, the places that always flood. We have a zone map of all the things that flood in our area. Our swiftwater crew didn't get started until Hurricane Matthew in 2017, 2016. We started in 2018 because our resources have always been the localities around us. We've never needed it. And then that day we needed it. And they were all busy because the city floods and the other city floods. So we're the county. And of course, now we flood too. So we're pretty new at this. And we're trying, but just trying to stay up on everything.
What is the basic equipment, Dana, that you have to have a swiftwater rescue team to actually go out and get somebody out of one vehicle?
One person in one vehicle. If you are actually doing a motorboat to it, you should have at least 2 boats, just in case something happens with the first. If you're doing paddle rafts, it probably still takes 10 people at least. It all depends on what approach you can do. I've seen a lot of videos in the last couple of days, and some of them I'm like, ooh, they got lucky. Ooh, I don't know about that. Sometimes it's with ladder trucks. Sometimes it's you're able to wade it because you can find the eddies and stuff like that. Sometimes the water is just moving too swiftly. If you find yourself in a vehicle, hopefully your car orients with the motor, and you can break out the back glass and climb and get on the top of on the roof of the car. Have something that will break your glass.
Good.
And hopefully, and actually, I saw something the other day of a lot of people that said, how do you survive flooding in your house? Make sure you've got an axe in the attic. Be weather aware, just know it's coming. If your animals are caught in it, they're probably not going to be the priority if there's houses floating by with people in them and RVs floating and cars floating and people at playgrounds. And we saw it during Helene. Unfortunately, there was at least one horse that I know that was lost, and people are like, oh, Billy Bob with his John boat can go out and get that horse. I don't understand. And they were evacuating people off the roof of a hospital. So there was a lot going on during Helene. But everybody thinks that water isn't a big deal because they're used to playing in it. And it's, the videos that Rebecca saw of us doing training, that was with 2 pumps in a controlled environment. And it's a lot for even us to swim. So we're going to have to do a risk analysis and see if we can even get to you. But unfortunately, there's just no guarantees.
And I think you bring up another point, though, that people just assume there's going to be somebody there to rescue them if they get in trouble.
But what if you're not the only one?
Exactly. Right. And so
we've got one boat crew,
right? That one should be have taken the responsibility to make sure that they've done their part. Yes, they might in the end need it because something really catastrophic has happened. But, I think the whole idea is the concept of preparedness has kind of, our parents used to think about it a whole lot more. I think they lived in a time where there was more situations that I remember doing, nuclear bomb drills that we had to go down in the basement. Okay, I'm dating myself here.
Me too.
And we just don't have the kind of natural environment emergency planning. We have other kinds of things, drills now for kids in school, as opposed to the natural disaster kind of planning that we had as kids in that.
And the thing is, it implies that you're rural if you have horses. There's some people that live in more urban areas with horses, but that's not most of the horse industry. Yeah. And if you're in a rural area, that means you're probably working with a volunteer fire department.
Right.
And like she said, they've got one boat crew. And then if they realize there's a problem like Camp Mystic, they started deploying the state teams and the national teams. But if I'm in, one of my teams in Illinois got sent to help with the disaster, it took them 3 days before they got deployed, right, because there's paperwork and they've got to get on a plane, and they got to get all their equipment ready and all those things. There's other teams from the state of Texas that were deployed almost immediately, but they still had to drive across the state of Texas, which is, right, 12 hours across. So it takes time. There's no such thing as somebody coming to get you right now. And what that really comes down to is resiliency and having a plan and being able to do those things. To me, the heroes are the people that are able to get out ahead of time. I saw that Kat was asking a question about what are the kinds of things that have the fire department out for, what types of things we should be looking at. It costs you nothing, guys, whether it's flooding or wildfire or barn fire, have your local fire department come out and ask them, hey, what would happen if there was a flood and I had a problem here? What is your perspective? See how their normal SOPs work. If we had a barn fire here, how would you guys get here? And the first thing they'll say is, well, I can't find your address because you don't have a reflective sign at the road. And then I get here and you got all these beautiful trees, but I can't get my big truck in here. And then I do get back down here, but I can't turn my truck around because you have, the barn next to the fences, and you can turn your Kia around, but you can't turn, and people say, well, I can turn a horse trailer around. I'm like, have you ever tried to turn a fire truck around? It's not the same.
And your beautiful brick gates are too small to get trucked in. And then there's no water.
So just getting there in a normal thing for, somebody falls off a horse and has a medical emergency, or you have a barn fire, or having those questions. So we call that a pre-plan. Having the fire department out from your area. They are not going to tax you, and they're not going to send you a bill. They're not going to get mad at you. They're not going to write you up. There may be some communities where they may do that, but if they do it, it's because they're trying to help. Right. But generally a pre-plan is free, and it's just helpful to you, and it helps you think through, and it familiarizes your local fire department with what you've got here, right? Like, where are the hazards to them? So Dana, you want to talk about some of the hazards that you would find when you pull up on a horse property?
Anything from no water to your fencing to whatever your building is to,
yeah.
Stalls, barn fans. Don't get me started on box fans.
Propane tanks.
Where you keep your hay, where you keep your equipment. Make sure they're separate. Whether or not you can catch the most feral of ponies. Whether or not you can load them on a trailer. Whether or not they're going to be flighty and crazy.
And in a flood event, are you guys as the fire department going to be worried about catching those horses and doing that? No.
Nope.
It's not y'all's job, right? So.
Nope.
Okay, so Rebecca, I just cruised back into my old shop and found your flood preparedness PDF.
Yes. There you go. And nothing's really changed.
Yep. And I think I have another one from you too. I think I have two. Homework for horse owners. I will put that link in there
too, because that's got a lot of stuff. And Wendy and I have done several of these over the years. And I'll tell you guys, if you take a look at her list, you'll find some. There was some that we did on. Let's see, we did
fires,
barn fires. We did how to look at around your place at some of the normal hazards like fencing, things like that can impact your animals. Trailer wrecks, we talked about that.
Oh yeah, and your trailer, I went out and I checked on my trailer and put on tape and everything else. It was a great webinar.
Yes. that was all about disaster prevention with trailer wrecks. And
Yeah.
I think we are lined up to do another one. We're going to be talking, maybe it's August 4th. I can't remember.
It's August. It is August.
Talking about.
Yeah, it is the 4th.
Yep. Talking about planning
Do you
for
have-
disasters, the final planning.
Do you have secondary egress off your property? If one way is blocked, do you have another way out?
People
I'm just looking at some of the notes that I had made a couple days ago. We see this a lot in the snow. You have a driveway that maybe is a little hairy when it gets snowy, and you decide to park your car on the bottom of the driveway and walk to your house. Well, if there's an emergency, we can't get to your house. So if you have a big long driveway, that's something we see all the time. And it's like, what do you want us to do?
Rebecca, I haven't looked at that flood preparedness in a while. Does it have the links that you talked about to getting the maps?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just in case people are watching.
That's my email and my cell phone right there. I tell people, email me under duress. You can send me a text on cell phone and I will try to help. I get it from fire departments all the time. Hey, we got a horse in a hole. How do we get it out? I know you do this and we meant to get training and we haven't. So how can you help us? That's the beauty of instant communication these days. You can try to help.
Wow. Well, I think you've given everybody a lot to think about, and as always, and your presentations are always kind of chilling and thought-provoking all at the same time.
And math. There's always math because physics, chemistry, and biology are always involved. But that's the natural sciences, right? I mean, and that's what we're looking at is the natural sciences and how they affect us in our daily lives that we may not have thought about. So. Dana, I want to thank you so much for joining today. It's lovely to meet you. I hope I never have to meet you in a bad way. I'd love to meet you in a good way. Yes.
Like Rebecca we still haven't gotten Sue Dyson on for a webinar yet, so you're going to have to.
I know. We got to
push her again.
Yes.
But anyway, are you going to be at AAP again this year?
I think I am. Hopefully with
Awesome.
her.
Great.
But if you have any problems trying to get Sue, let me know and I'll just drag her on.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Yeah, you can come on with her and drag her on. That'd be awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions, I want to thank you both for joining us today. It's been a great webinar as always, and very, very timely, and just something we really need to think about ahead of time so that we're not, caught in a bad situation. So thank you both so much for joining.
Thank you for hosting it.
Okay.
Good to see
All right. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.